high above the Talon moon, on a course that would take them through the long shadows of a lunar mountain range to screen them from any astronomers on Talon 4, Kirk piloted the shuttle John Burke. He was accompanied by Spock and McCoy. Precisely 2 kilometers astern and holding to the same course, Sulu piloted the shuttle Galileo with Uhura, Chekhov, and Carolyn Palamas. Outpost 47 was concealed deep within a nondescript mountain on the moon of Talon 4. The only access to it was through a large opening leading directly to a shuttle landing bay. But that opening was camouflaged by a holographic projection of a mountain wall, successfully hiding the base from Talon lunar probes. Inside the Outpost's main monitoring lab, FCO researchers and their computers listened in on virtually all public communication transmissions from Talon 4, including 300 television channels, more than 5,000 radio channels, and several 100,000 personal channels. To Kirk, the main monitoring lab resembled a starship's bridge enlarged 10 times. It had a circular layout, ringed by at least 50 subsystem stations, with a central command desk instead of a con. 5 technicians, outfitted with audio inputs, sat at the command desk constantly adjusting controls while observing a master view screen twice as tall and 4 times as wide as the bridge screen on the Enterprise. But instead of showing a single screen, the master screen divided into over 100 identical small rectangular displays and 10 expanded ones. The overall effect was overwhelming. Kirk couldn't make out what was being shown on most of them, but on one he recognized the saurian face of a Talon, and among the background drone of noise in the monitoring lab, he heard a whispery and unfamiliar alien language that appeared to be in sync with the movements of the Talon's mouth. Next to Kirk, Carol Mallet smiled at the effect the lab was having on him. Mallet was an attractive, red-haired woman who wore a shuttle pilot's uniform. She was the Outpost's flight director and had already conducted more than 20 research flights to Talon 4 to obtain samples of the planet's soil, plant, and animal life. At the moment, she was earnestly discussing the Outpost's extensive communications network with Uhura. Kirk became aware of Spock at his side. "Captain, I believe you should look at the 3rd large display from the right on the main screen." Kirk and Mallet turned to the screen, along with the others from the landing party. Kirk was stunned by what he saw. "Is that a pickup from a security sensor in the Outpost's landing bay?" Kirk did not want to believe what the alternative was. "No," Mallet said. "That's what's called a news broadcast. It's like a non-interactive update channel." It was then that Kirk understood the reason for the tension in his dealings with this outpost, and the reason for the unprecedented communications blackout. There, on the screen, from a Talon News transmission, was a blurry but all too recognizable image of what was unquestionably a Federation shuttle in flight. It could only mean that the FCO itself was on the brink of compromising the Prime Directive, however unintentionally. Kirk turned abruptly from the screen. "I think we've done enough sightseeing for now. It's time we met the director of this base." The director of FCO Outpost 47 was Zalen Wilforth. He was slight in build, pale-skinned, and appeared nervous. As Kirk rose from his seat at the conference table in the Outpost ready room, he guessed that from the director's name, Wilforth was of combined Earth and Centauran heritage. The Centauran part was confirmed when they shook hands, and Kirk felt the extra joint in the director's little finger. Wilforth was accompanied by his two senior managers, Carol Mallet and Mario Cardinale, the Outpost's communication manager. Cardinale was a large, powerfully built human, probably from some high-gravity colony world. Wilforth sat down at one end of the table, with his managers on either side. Kirk joined his landing party at the table's opposite end and immediately took charge of the meeting. We've seen the news broadcast in the main monitoring lab. As far as the Talon are concerned, they have an image of an alien spacecraft, don't they? Wilforth squirmed uncomfortably in his chair as he answered. Some think so. Many Talon are forward-thinking, and their successes in orbital and lunar missions have awakened le rêve d'étoile, the dream of stars, and as on most spacefaring pre-contact worlds, there is considerable public debate about the likelihood that other civilizations might exist around other stars. Sometimes there have been violent altercations between supporters of both groups, those who believe and those who do not. And the Talon are not a particularly violent race. Spock joined the conversation. Yet they are poised on the brink of global war. Well, that's quite true, Mr. Spock, and that's the main problem we face. There is nothing in Talon cultural history to suggest that they would ever be capable of reaching such a position. The FCO has never seen a culture progress so rapidly toward self-destruction. We are at a loss to explain it. How long ago was the sampling shuttle detected? Kirk asked. We believe 6 months ago. I admit there's a chance that one of the two nations, we call them the Browns and the Greens, that are near war on Talon, have obtained other images of our research shuttles. If so, whichever side has those images hasn't released them, probably to prevent its opponent from gaining information about the state of its advanced imaging technology. Spock spoke again. Director Wilforth, I do not understand why you ordered a complete communications blackout, including matter transmissions, if you are convinced the Talon sensors are limited to the ordinary visual and energy spectrums. They do not have our advanced transstater technology. Director Wilforth looked even more agitated than before. Well, true, Mr. Spock. The Talon do not have transstater capability. However, the planet does have large deposits of rubidium. How extraordinary. From Spock's response, Kirk knew that his science officer was thoroughly astounded. Rubidium crystals were crucial to the development of subspace communications technology. They were so sensitive to the faster-than-light energy spectrum that if the Talon were conducting any experiments with the crystals, there was a chance they could detect subspace radiation emissions from the Enterprise. Spock drew the obvious conclusion. Then, if the Talon are at present conducting rubidium experiments, any strong subspace activity in their system could lead them to conclude that they had detected an interstellar communications network, even though they would not have developed the technology to intercept, generate, or receive messages of their own. Truly, a unique set of circumstances. Kirk leaned toward Wilforth. Has the FCO made a ruling on how this might affect the application of the Prime Directive? Kirk asked Wilforth. No, Captain. As you well know, the Prime Directive is one of the most rigorously enforced regulations in the Federation and one of the most complex. Any special ruling would have to be made solely on the basis of precise, unquestionable data, and we don't have enough of that right now. What data do you have? Well, basically, it comes down to this. First, our Our monitoring leads us to believe that the Talon are aware that they are under our covert observation, though we do not know precisely how that is possible. Second, the majority of Talon, especially their leaders, do not accept that this observation would be the activity of non-Talon aliens. Instead, each of the opposing forces on Talon 4 believes the other is responsible. Kirk looked over at Spock before speaking again. They both understood the nightmarish situation the FCO was in. Are you saying that there's a chance that FCO operations have intensified the feelings of distrust between the two sides, and that the increased potential for war which now exists on Talon is the result of interference? Exactly. Wilforth was relieved that Kirk seemed to follow his reasoning. And that's where the Enterprise comes in. Obviously, we need access to information that is not being released publicly. We need to know all the details of the shuttle sighting. We have to know what phenomena spurred the two sides to upgrade their sensor systems so that the shuttle could be recorded. The sensor satellites you are placing in orbit for us will give us that data. But Kirk disagreed. Director, given the state of the military alert on Talon 4 and the fact that the Talon suspect that they are already under observation, it's too risky to deploy close-orbiting satellites around that world. He stood up to end the meeting. I'm sure you understand that in a situation like this, I have to report back to Starfleet Command for specific orders. To take the Enterprise into a mission that might compromise the Prime Directive is beyond my authority as a Starship Commander. Captain Kirk, you don't have time to report back to Starfleet. Because of the subspace blackout conditions, it will take you 14 days to hear back from Starfleet after you transmit your report. I'm quite aware of the time frame, Director Wilforth. No, Captain, you're not. The director looked down at the tabletop, afraid to meet Kirk's eyes. You see, the situation on Talon is impossible. It cannot hold for another 14 days. There's a very good chance it won't last even 3 more days. No matter what your orders say, you don't have time to contact Starfleet. Kirk was shocked. The situation was far worse than the reports had stated. I'm sorry to do this to you, Captain Kirk, but I do know that when a Starship Commander must act within a time period which prevents communication with a higher authority, that Starship Commander is empowered to act independently in a manner which he or she believes is in keeping with the best interests of Starfleet and the Federation. Kirk sat back down. The director was right. There is no more time, Captain Kirk. And under the circumstances, as a Starship Commander, you are the highest authority in charge of what happens next. Wilforth looked up and finally met Kirk's eyes. The fate of an entire civilized world and the lives of more than 2 billion beings now rests in your hands, sir. What will you do? Chief Engineer's Log Supplemental. The Enterprise is now in orbit around Talon 4, using all her deflectors to avoid being detected by the Talon's ground-based radar units. Captain Kirk has decided to help Director Wilforth obtain the classified information needed to determine why the Talon seem to be aware of the FCO. To collect this data, we have now deployed 8 sensor satellites that can monitor even the most secure military communications network. On Talon 4 itself, the situation remains tense, with the latest threat to peace being an incident involving an unidentified intrusion into the Green Nation's polar airspace. Talon negotiators for both the Green and the Brown nations are working hard to defuse the situation peacefully. And for all the power of the Enterprise, the only action we can take is to pray that they are successful. Three hours later, the Enterprise once again filled with the sound of cheers. Her mission had ended in a way even her captain had not expected. Talon 4 was at peace. McCoy stood with Spock by Kirk's chair on the bridge. "It has been a most fascinating sequence of events," Spock said. McCoy's grin was blinding. "Fascinating? That's not the word for it, Mr. Spock. They went from the brink of destruction to a secure future in less than a day of intense negotiations. That's what I'd call a miracle." Kirk stood up from his chair and stretched wearily. "Gentlemen, I have no doubt that a few decades from now, when the Talon historians study the recordings we've made today, they'll agree with you both." For the first time since his initial meeting with Director Wilforth, Kirk felt himself begin to relax. The mission was over, and the Prime Directive had not been broken. Of all the hundreds of rooms in the Enterprise, Kirk's favorite was the herbarium, especially during ship's night, when the lighting was subdued and the night-blooming flowers filled the air with their elusive fragrance. It always reminded him of home. The farm in Iowa, his mother's garden, the summer nights when the sky shimmered with uncountable stars. Kirk closed his eyes and drew in another deep breath. 50,000 kilometers beyond the viewport, Talon 4 also rested in peace. Such undisturbed moments were rare on the Enterprise, so he was not surprised when the paging whistle sounded. But the red alert was like a knife. Chekhov's voice thundered from the intercom.
"Bridge to Captain! Bridge to Captain! We have missile launches on Talon 4! We have detonations!"
Kirk pushed his way through the turbolift doors and arrived on the bridge out of breath. The view screen showed the terrible truth in full magnification. The dayside of Talon glittered with the brilliant pinprick flares of fusion fireballs. Dozens, hundreds, more sparkling into hellish life with each second. "Why?" Kirk whirled to Uhura. "What happened?" Uhura looked desperate. "Unknown, Captain. There has been no mention of any war preparations on any of the comm channels we've been monitoring." "Zulu, take us in there. Full impulse." Even as the helmsman acknowledged the order, the image of Talon swelled on the screen. The ship was in fixed orbit in seconds, poised over Talon 4. "Chekhov, evaluation." The ensign's hands trembled over his controls. "Wait, it's insane, Captain. All weapons have been launched. All weapons. There is no strategy, no plan, just they are firing everything." Kirk saw his straw and grasped at it. "Are you saying malfunction, mister? Is that it? Is that a malfunction down there?" Chekhov grimaced. "They can't want to do this. Not like that. It must be something else that caused it." The turbolift doors burst open again. Spock burst onto the bridge, still adjusting his uniform. His mouth opened as he saw what was on the screen, but he said nothing. "Everything's been launched, Spock. No plan, no strategy." "That is senseless." "Exactly, Spock. Senseless. Something to do with disarming the automated alert systems. That's the only explanation. Perhaps, Captain. Even Spock was shaken by the destruction spreading on the screen. The Talon are not capable of such insanity. But without more information, we can't be sure what triggered it. We can't be certain what to do. Kirk turned to his crew. Bring those missiles down. No, Captain. Spock stepped away from his station to confront Kirk. Without data, without communication logs, you cannot. I know, Spock. I know. Kirk thrust out his arm to point at the screen. But look what they're doing to themselves down there. He made his decision. Everyone, I cannot order you to act against the Prime Directive, but I believe that something else beyond the Talon's control has caused this, and I believe we are justified in stopping it. Kirk looked at each of his bridge crew in turn. After a moment's hesitation, Spock was at his station. Processing targeting data. Chekhov spoke next. Sir, I volunteered to bring down the missiles. Transmitting self-destruct and callback codes, Uhura said. Sulu brought the ship about. Moving in on main missile flights. McCoy ran from the turbo lift, then stopped in horror at what he saw. My God, those ignorant fools! It's not their fault, Bones. It has to be a massive equipment malfunction. They trusted too much to their computers, or maybe... Captain Kirk, all radio frequencies are jammed, sir. Uhura jabbed at her controls in frustration. Nothing can get through, not even the Talon's own messages. Can you broadcast on subspace and phase down to radio frequencies once you've passed the jamming boundary? Uhura looked at Spock. Mr. Spock, I'll need your help to... I will begin the proper sensor alignment. Kirk stared at the screen, willing the miniature suns that grew silently on it to disappear. On the planet's night side, the arc of atmosphere already glowed red from the firestorms that had erupted. Where are those phasers, Mr. Chekhov? Sir, targeting modes are not working. I can't lock on anything. All signals are being jammed. What? That's impossible. The Talon don't have the technology. Could it be an effect of all the fusion explosions? Kirk saw more fireballs blossom on the ravaged surface of Talon. The planet looked as if its core had exploded and was bursting through its shell. Perhaps, Captain, but our sensors are useless. What if we went in closer? Boosted power to all subspace systems and punched through the interference. That could work, Spock confirmed. Sulu, take us in past the jamming layer. Sulu hesitated for an instant. Sir, that will take us through the ionosphere and into the atmosphere proper. Won't be the first time, Kirk said. His fists were clenched. Take us in. The Enterprise fell toward Talon 4. Within seconds, the rough buffeting of atmospheric flight shook the bridge. Kirk knew Mr. Scott would be complaining for days to come. Chekhov, try those phasers again. The familiar whine of the phaser capacitors echoed through the bridge. They're working. Chekhov slapped the side of his console in triumph. Limited range, but they're working. Uhura, try the self-destruct signals again. Yes, sir. Getting some response, sir. The ship bucked wildly. Wild wind screamed against her hull. Shockwaves from multiple explosions. Sulu's hands moved feverishly over the controls. This is like flying through water, sir. Uhura gasped and pulled her earpiece from her ear. That is subspace feedback on all comm channels, Spock said. This is not a natural phenomenon. This is a deliberate attempt to... Sulu broke in urgently. Incoming missiles! Impossible, Kirk answered. We have been targeted, Spock confirmed. Missiles are locked. Well, the Talon can't do this, Spock. They don't have the capability. The communication page sounded. Scott's voice came over the intercom.
Scott to bridge. If you don't mind me asking, what the hell's going on up there?
5 seconds to missile impact, Spock announced.
Full power to shields, Scotty! Now! Now! Sulu, get us out of...
The view screen flared brilliant white until the visual compensators cut in. The ship shuddered, as if it had smashed into solid rock. Uhura fell from her chair. Spock slammed over the railing, and all Kirk could hear was every bridge alarm screaming at him in betrayal. Sulu's cry cut through the alarms. "Captain, the impulse is gone. We're in free fall. Impact on planet surface in 1 minute." The rush of air outside the hull rose in a frantic wail. Kirk felt his heart stop. With the impulse engines gone, there was only one way out. But it was madness. Madness.
Warp us out, Sulu! Warp us out!
Scott shouted over the intercom.
Captain, we're too deep into the planet's gravity well. We won't survive the transition to warp.
Now, Sulu, there is no other... The hull metal creaked, and the ship twisted as another barrage of missiles detonated against her shields. Spock pulled himself back to his feet. Green blood flooded his eyes from a gash on his forehead. 30 seconds to impact, Sulu announced. Going to warp now! It was like death. The view screen went black. The lights cut out. Gravity failed, and there was only a long, endless fall into utter darkness. Then, the emergency lights flickered back on, and Kirk saw everything before him blur in a high-speed vibration. Spock said,
"Emergency systems online."
Partial gravity returned. Color trails flickered from every object as local time slowed down. Scott's voice was plaintive, slow, and warbling over the comlink.
Warp generators are runaway. Link to singularity on runaway. Jettison nacelles.
Kirk felt trapped in thick liquid. The Enterprise had to cut her warp space link to Talon 4's gravity well, or the ship would become trapped in an endless moment of time. Spock struggled to respond.
Crew evacuation complete. Starboard nacelle, away.
Kirk felt stretched like rubber. The view screen flickered to show the infinite fractal nightmare of the gravitational wormhole that loomed hungrily before them. He felt a part of him wrenched away as the long, white, graceful form of the starboard warp nacelle flew down the maw of the beast, distorted in dizzying eddies of higher dimensional realities. Gravity failed, and they fell again. Kirk's hands gripped the sides of his chair. His foot hooked under the seat to hold him in place. Someone flew through the air beside him. Equipment consoles flared and sparked. No, Kirk thought. I won't let you go. I won't let you go alone. Spock continued to report.
Port nacelle locked in position. Cannot jettison.
Only one more chance, Kirk thought. worse than the last. He ordered Spock to eject all matter and antimatter into the wormhole. Spock didn't argue. If the singularity won, they would not even know death. Only the torment of being forever trapped in the agonizing instant just before the end. Kirk saw the twin ionized jets of matter and antimatter stream down the wormhole with agonizing slowness. Then at last they met and interacted. The screen went blank. Time stopped. Kirk fell into oblivion. Kirk awoke to the sound of a spray hypo. McCoy stared down at him. The doctor's face was haggard and blood-smeared.
Good,
was all McCoy said. Then he moved on to the others. Kirk pushed himself from the floor of the bridge. He did it on a lean, because the gravity field was out of alignment, placing the floor on a relative 5-degree angle. Smoke filled the air. He heard moans. Half the station displays were out. The other half flickered with gibberish, and only a few battery lights were working, making the whole area dark and murky. Spock staggered to Kirk's side, a green-soaked bandage covering the gash on his forehead. It worked. The matter-antimatter explosion pushed us out of the gravity well into normal space. But what else did it do? Kirk numbly surveyed the shattered bridge. His ship was dying around him. How long have I been out? 3 minutes, 18 seconds. Spock seemed weak and distracted. Every translator circuit on the ship appears to be fused. The subspace energy pulse directed at us was incredible. But from where? Unknown, Captain. Unknown. Kirk saw a shape move onto the view screen. It was Talon. The planet was on fire. The entire planet. It drifted slowly across the screen, then disappeared. The Enterprise spun slowly, adrift in space. We are quite powerless, Spock said before Kirk could ask. Kirk heard a dull thudding noise, and then one of the kick-in panels by the turbo lift popped out of position. Scott appeared holding a hand light that sent a solid shaft of light through the smoke. He was followed by 2 medical technicians. "Oh, thank heavens you're all right, Captain. The comm system's out, the turbo lifts..." Scott saw Talon move across the view screen. "Oh, no. How did it happen? And what happened to the ship?" "We were attacked by Talon missiles." Spock's tone betrayed no emotion. Kirk watched Scott's reaction. The fact that the Enterprise had been attacked meant that without a doubt, the Talon had known the ship was in orbit around their planet, in direct and flagrant violation of the Prime Directive. Scott was a good officer. He'd know what he would have to do next under such circumstances. "Mr. Spock, are you sure that the Talon missiles were directed at the Enterprise herself?" Kirk put his hand on Scott's shoulder. "They were, Scotty. The Talon knew we were here. They came after us." Scott looked at the screen. Already more than half of Talon 4 was enshrouded in brown and black clouds. "Oh, Captain Kirk." Scott had not been on the bridge. He knew that left him untainted and the next in line. "It's all right, Scotty. You know what you have to do." "But, Captain, Kirk couldn't look at his chief engineer. "Damn it, Scotty. You're a Starfleet officer. You know what you have to do." Scott nodded. The funeral fires of Talon filled the bridge with their dreadful glow. "Aye, that I do." Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott faced his captain. "James Kirk, as per Starfleet Command Regulation 7, Paragraph 4, you must now consider yourself under arrest unless, in the presence of these fellow officers, you give satisfactory answer to the charge which I now bring." "Sir, I charge you with knowingly and willfully contravening Starfleet's Prime Directive as set forth in General Order 1. Can you answer that charge, sir?" Kirk shook his head. There was nothing more that could be done. He had destroyed a world. He had destroyed his ship. "Then, James Kirk, you are relieved of your command." Scott looked toward the view screen. Talon burned. "And whatever gods there are, may they have mercy on your soul." Part 3, Talon. It had been difficult to relive the agonizing events of his last mission aboard the Enterprise. But James Kirk had told his story to Captain Gavreau. Now the freighter Ian Shelton had reached the colony world of Hanover and was in orbit near the planet's commercial space dock, her cargo unloaded. Waiting in the Shelton's cramped crew lounge, Kirk hefted his kit bag over his shoulder. When Captain Gavreau returned from the space dock's business office and paid him for his work, he planned to catch a shuttle down to the colony world's freighter yards. There he would try his luck again at getting another cargo handling job, or even pay for freighter passage to another system closer still to Talon. The doors puffed open behind him. Gavreau was back, arms filled with packages from the space dock's shopping arcade. Kirk dropped his bag to help her stow them away, but she wasn't interested in her purchases for the moment. Instead, she opened a carry case filled with yellow microtapes. She held one up to him. "The latest update tapes, Kirk, from Starfleet. Is there something special going on out in the galaxy you think I should know about?" "Don't give me that. You know there is." Kirk listened to and read the main updates whenever he got the chance. He knew that nothing had happened in the Talon system since Starfleet had blockaded it to keep out scavengers and exploiters and leave the Talon undisturbed by the worlds beyond their own. But now Gavreau acted as something had changed. "It seems you're not the only one who wants to go back to Talon." Gavreau plugged a tape into a personal screen pad reader, and a series of names scrolled online. Kirk took the reader from her hand and scanned the list of names. They were all Enterprise crew. "What is this?" "That's a recall list, Kirk. Authorized by Vice Admiral Hammersmith, no less. All officers and specialists are being reassigned to their previous postings on the Enterprise, on station in the Talon system. Kirk took the rest of the microtapes and began feeding them into the reader. There were dozens of updates, and the story they told was staggering. Kirk read rapidly. They detached the port nacelle. They told me it couldn't be done. And nothing happened, just like Scotty said in all his reports. Replacement warp nacelles are in transit. Crew is being recalled. For a moment, he felt as if he couldn't breathe. My ship, the Enterprise, she's... Devroe touched him gently on his shoulder. I know. She's going to be given to someone else. Kirk's eyes sped over the screen. I don't understand. Scott says the damage was caused by a focused subspace pulse, not the nuclear detonations. He looked up, eyes blazing. That means it was a deliberate attack. And it was beyond the Talon's technological capabilities. If Scott was right, that meant there was a chance that something other than his actions had caused what happened to the Enterprise and to Talon 4. Kirk quickly scanned through the rest of the tapes. According to the updates, he had less than a week to get back to Talon before Starfleet would be starting warp trials with the Enterprise to bring her new nacelles into balance. A week. Thank you, Captain. Kirk stood suddenly with a screen pad on his hand. I can't tell you what this means to me. Sit down, Kirk. You don't have to go anywhere yet. You don't understand. I have less than a week to get to Talon. The Shelton can make it in 5 days. I'm going to have to... What? Don't look at me like that, Kirk. You heard what I said. I'm the captain, and this ship's next port is Talon 4. Gavreau opened a small, soft-sided bag and pulled out 2 personal microtapes. You see, at the Starfleet Communications Office over at the space dock, I was able to request a search for everything to do with the Enterprise and Talon, because they're both within Starfleet jurisdiction. But for the rest of the Enterprise 5, I had to go to the update bureaus. Gavreau took the screen pad from Kirk and slipped in one of the new tapes. Kirk tried not to show how eager he was for news of his friends. She passed over the screen pad again. Kirk took it calmly from her, but then forgot all about keeping up appearances as he read the update story 3 times before he was sure he believed it. Spock speaking before the Federation Council? That's right. Gavreau was clearly excited. Apparently, he's arguing that the Prime Directive should not continue to be enforced on Talon 4 because the Talon disaster was caused by outside interference, other than the Enterprise. He can prove that? Gavreau held up her second tape. No, but that's the point. Spock claims that the Federation hasn't adequately investigated all possibilities. He makes the case that unless the Federation is prepared to absolutely disprove outside interference, the Articles of Federation require it to extend compassionate aid to Talon, and because of Spock, there seems to be quite a public outcry for that emergency relief. Even Spock will never be able to pressure the Council like that. Gavreau looked Kirk in the eye. Maybe and maybe not, but my credits are all on your Mr. Spock. All of them. She flipped open the screen of her Paymaster terminal and hit the balance button. It came up close to 0. The ship's accounts were drained. What did you buy? Emergency supplies, medical mostly. Should come in handy when Starfleet calls off their blockade. You're serious, aren't you? According to the updates, Kirk, I'm not the only one. There are at least 200 ships already underway to Talon. Something's going to give up there soon. And whatever else happens, you and I will be there, along with your ship and your crew.